I don't know about you, but as I've gotten older, I've really tried to listen and learn from people whose experiences are different than mine. Today's guest, Emily Harvey, is an amputee who is missing much of her left leg. I met Emily through skirt sports several years ago, and I think you'll quickly understand why she is so adored by me and the community. Stick around. Hey there, I'm Amy.Connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves and enjoy a little chocolate in the process. And I don't know about you, but I am thick in the holiday season, and yes, I am enjoying that chocolate. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you are called to do. As I said in the intro, today I'm talking with Emily Harvey, an amputee who is also just a really amazing athlete. We discuss all kinds of things in today's episode. We talk about some of the obstacles she encounters as an amputee that might not even occur to someone who has full use of both legs. We talk about how to respond when your child might ask an uncomfortable conversation in the grocery store about someone with a prosthesis. And then we also talk about her two books, The Girl with the Robot Leg, Being Brave, and The Girl with the Robot Leg, Being Bold. And you are going to be blown away when you find out how quickly she released these books or how far apart she did. It's just amazing. Emily's leg was amputated when she was 2 because she has a condition called fibular hemimelia, which means that she was missing her fibula bone and her left leg was substantially shorter than her right. We talk about this a little bit. She grew up really not knowing any different. She even asked her grandma at some point when she got her first prosthesis because Emily had it in her head that everyone wore a prosthesis. And for the record, her grandma does not wear a prosthesis. Now, Emily's, you got to give a lot of credit to Emily's parents. I mean, she went on to do anything and everything that girls her age did: t-ball, volleyball, bikes, climb trees, much to her dad's dismay and everything else. She started riding horses when she was about 9 and eventually rode on her college dressage team. In 2014, she started competing in triathlons, and in June of 2018, she became the first amputee to complete Ironman Boulder and is also one of less than 10 female amputees to complete an iron distance triathlon. Emily's a civil rights attorney and co-founder and president of LIM 359, an activities-based support group for people with limb loss or different. Before I bring Emily on, I would love to get my latest project into your hands. It's called How to Enjoy Shame-Free Health by Breaking 8 Rules. We are coming up on the new year, and I would love for you to have a different perspective than so many do about feeling like they have to abide by all of the health rules. You can grab yours. It's all free at gracedhealth.com/bad rules. Okay, let's bring Emily on. Emily, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Okay, so we are sitting down in the evening. It's about 7 p.m. my time, 6 p.m. So I would love to hear, how was your day today? Like, life has been bananas lately, and it feels like every day is a new day. So how was your day today?
Today was pretty good. Through all of this, I've really tried to establish some routines that I keep up with, and that includes walking twice a day with my dog, and she loves that. And I just had a regular work day, which involves me sitting at the computer most of the day.
Yeah.
And I actually made a spaghetti squash in the crock pot for the first time.
Oh, I don't think I've done it in the crock pot. How did that turn out?
It was really good.
Yeah?
It was a spaghetti squash Alfredo.
Ooh, yum. I tend to overcook mine. So like it doesn't have the stringy part. And that's just one area. I've got a couple things that I'm really terrible at cooking. But I keep trying. And in fact, I've got one in my fridge that is asking to be cooked and I have not yet done that.
Yeah, I love the crock pot, but and I love spaghetti squash, but I had never combined the two until today, and it worked out pretty good.
Okay, well that's good to know. I might try that. I can't remember if I've tried it in the Instapot or not. Do you have an Instapot? Yeah.
Yeah, my mother-in-law got us one.
Oh man, it's a game changer. That was like the best money someone ever spent on me. Because my kids got it, or my family got it for me for Christmas last year. Okay, well, I'm so glad to hear you, or I'm so glad that you are here. And I'm sure the listeners probably don't want to hear all about my Instapot and failed spaghetti squash. So we'll just kind of dig in. I've introduced you a little bit ahead of time, but I was wondering if you could tell everybody just a little bit about yourself and what you like to do, any kind of backstory, this is your place to talk to us.
Sure. So I was born, I'll start at the beginning, but I promise I won't include all the details. That'll take an hour to get through. I was born with a condition called fibular hemimelia, which means that I was missing my fibula bone in my left leg, and pretty much everything from my waist down on the left side is shorter. So when I was a baby, I had a leg length difference of about 2.5 centimeters, and obviously the missing bone. And the doctors, my parents consulted with a few doctors, and the recommendation for functionality's sake was to amputate. And my parents made that decision and had my left foot amputated when I was 2. And I grew up not knowing any different. And, I played different sports. I rode bikes. I climbed trees, much to my dad's chagrin. And, um, I got into horseback riding when I was about 9. And we had to make some modifications because of my leg length difference. My knee centers are still off. And, I rode on my college dressage team. And then I kind of had a period in my life where I wasn't as active. My quote unquote exercise was waiting tables at Red Lobster. That was what I did at the end of college and a couple years afterwards. And then I moved up to the DC area from Southwest Virginia, where I was in college, and started working at Walter Reed and met my now husband there. And through that, kind of started getting active again. And when we moved to Denver in 2013, I walked a 7K with my friend Jessica, and I saw the people running, and I was like, dude, why am I not running? Like, I want to do that. I want to be a runner. And, at different points in my life, I had tried to be a runner. My mom was a cross country runner at Colorado State University. My dad was a hockey player. And I never had the right prosthetic leg to really make it accessible to me. And, through meeting my husband and, different opportunities, I was able to get a running leg finally. And so I started running. I ran my first 5K. I decided I didn't want to do distances. And so therefore I was going to do triathlon. So I never had to run more than a 5K. And then in 2018, I did a full Ironman. So that was kind of the build up. And then I did a 50K last year, and I
Oh
haven't
my
run for a
gosh.
year now.
Yeah.
So
Well, that is
um,
a well-deserved running break for sure.
yeah, yeah. So I've just been trying to find a little bit more balance,
Yeah.
as opposed to training all the time. And so my goal this year has been to just walk 3 miles every day, and that's maintained a healthy balance between getting activity, having time to cook, and just enjoy other things.
Yeah. Ironman training is like a full-time job. And I really appreciate how you are intentionally trying to find balance. I mean, I think that that can be a really exciting thing. I have a family member who does them. I mean, it's amazing, but I think sometimes it can just be like it's a season. And what I really love to hear you say is that you were inspired to kind of kick up your fitness or kick it back into play from a race. It's funny. I don't. This was recently, but I did a post, or I on Thursdays, I release really short episodes that are real fitness perspective because I'm a trainer. And it was like, how can I get my child to get moving? And I know you weren't a child when this happened, but I said, try doing a race. Like there is something magical about the race environment. I don't care how fast you're going. I don't care what your goals are. I mean, I love the race environment, and it's something that I've really missed, particularly in COVID. But yeah, that's a great place to get inspired.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks for sharing all of that. So before we kind of dig in a little bit, I feel like I need to do almost something like a disclaimer. So one thing that is really important to me is to use the kind of language that edifies acceptance. So if I say something that you would like to correct, please jump in and correct me or do that. I'm not always perfect with my word choice. So I would love any guidance on that. And I know that that's something that's, keen in my listeners as well. Like we want to make sure that we are loving, that we're saying the right things, that we never unintentionally, hurt someone. So I just kind of want to throw that out there. So help me learn.
Sure. I mean, I really appreciate your your openness to that. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of part of the things that I'm going to ask a little bit later here. One thing that I really appreciate about you is your openness to talk about your robot leg, which is how you describe it in your book. So you and I met in the skirt sports community, which was led by Nicole DeBoom, who shameless plug was on the show recently, season 8. And you were so gracious to share your success and your struggles as someone who wears a prosthesis while exercising. So I was wondering if you could share some of the obstacles that you encounter that others, like maybe we don't even know is a thing. Like, doesn't even occur to us that this is a challenge when you are swimming or biking or running or walking or horseback riding or whatever it is. One of the many, many things that Emily Harvey does.
I mean, I think the first barrier, which I've already alluded to, is just having access to the right devices. When you have both your legs and you want to start running, you really just need to go buy a pair of running shoes and can get by with any old pair of tennis shoes to a certain point. But if you're an amputee and you want to start running, it's really hard to do that on a leg that is intended for walking. As much as prosthetics have advanced in recent years, there's not one device that is good for both of those things.
Really?
And so, yeah. So even when I did the Ironman, you know, I even when I was running all the time, I am not fast. And I had a little snafu on the bike during that Ironman, and led to my legs really being tired by the time I got to the run. And I ended up walking a large portion of that race. And I had, they're called handlers. So I had a handler.
Okay.
Her name is Sasha. She's amazing. And she carried a backpack to carry my other leg so that I could switch from running to walking. Because if I walk a lot on my running leg, it really wears my glutes out.
Okay.
And running on my walking leg isn't ideal. So I guess that would be one of the biggest barriers. And then as far as swimming, it's actually one of the best things that I've found as an amputee because there's no pressure on my residual limb. The hard part comes with getting out of the water, particularly when you're doing open water swimming.
Oh, yeah.
Funny enough, I actually swim straighter than my husband, who has all of his limbs. Uh, but some people think that that might be an issue. I haven't found it to be an issue. I just kind of use my little leg as a rudder. I don't really kick with it.
Okay.
So those would be a couple things. And then the other big one, which I think people do understand on some level, is chafing. So along with chafing in all the other areas, I get bad chafing on my residual limb. And
Like where it
um,
attaches in?
yeah, so kind of on the posterior distal side of the residual
Okay.
limb, um, I have
So that's the
a
back
weird shaped leg.
inside. Okay.
Yeah, yep. So I have a weird shaped limb, and just the way that sweat pools and the leg rubs, even with the best fit, I I do have issues with that.
Okay.
So those would be the big ones.
Okay. I'm curious, just because this is the kind of stuff that I dig knowing, which sounds really weird as I'm saying this, but is your glutes, are they, is one side a lot stronger than the other? And do you have to do intentional training to keep them relatively equally strong? I mean, mine are not the same strength. I can tell when I do things, but is that something that you have to really focus on doing?
Yeah, for sure. My glutes are noticeably different sizes. If I, lay on my stomach and you look at my bottom, you can tell that one is larger than the other. And throughout the years, I did weight training in college or in high school actually, and it's always something that I tried to focus on, but have never been able to achieve equality between the glutes,
Yeah.
no matter how hard I've tried.
Yeah,
So
that's a tough, I think that's tough for anyone. I mean, I did a like a body composition analysis about a year ago, and the results came back and he was going over them with me. It was a fascinating thing, by the way, to do, but he said you have 1.7 more pounds in your right glute, or it was my right quads, than my left ones. And he was like, you really want to try and even that out. And man, I tried and tried, and I still, even having injured my right glute, I still have that imbalance. So I can only imagine when you're the biomechanics of your body and the moving and the gait and all of that are just going to be a little different. So yeah, it's going to be a lot harder.
yeah, yeah. But if you want to have a contest to see who can stand on their right leg the longest, I could probably win.
I'm sure. I would put money on you any day for that. That's awesome. That's awesome. One thing that I have heard you talk about is when you've talked about being out like at the grocery store or something like that, and getting kind of funny looks from children, right? Like children don't have any filter; they don't know what to say. So, and most of my listeners have, they're like 40s and 50s, but still, even at the teenage years, sometimes they're saying something, or they might have had kids a little bit later. So, what would you want a parent to say? Like if they're standing there in Target and their sweet little 4-year-old child says, "Mommy, what's wrong with her leg?" Or something like that. Can you give us a little bit of guidance on maybe a good learning response?
Yeah, and I will give a caveat that I don't know that everyone with a prosthetic limb would have the same answer as me, but
Yeah.
from my perspective, I think the worst thing that a parent could do in that situation is to shush the child or divert them elsewhere and say, "We'll talk about it later," or we don't talk about that." I think that that encourages fear and
Mm.
uh, not accepting something. I think what I have been impressed by is when parents say, "Oh yeah, that's different. Everybody has differences. That's cool. What do you think about it?" And I often, if I overhear them, I usually turn to the child and I'm like, "Oh, did you notice my robot leg? Do you like the sparkles? Do you want to touch it? Do you have any
Oh, I
questions?"
love that.
Just to open the conversation, because I think that when we encourage that conversation, we're normalizing it and we're creating acceptance rather than fear or the sense that it's a taboo subject that we can't talk about.
Yeah, I love that word, that normalize. I've been hearing that more and more. I'm a big Brene Brown fan. She uses that word a lot.
Me too.
But it's so true. And just talking about it. And I bet too, whenever that happens, you could, I'd be willing to bet you can like see the stress in the parent's face just kind of melt, like, oh my goodness, like this is so much
Yeah.
better than I thought it was going to go, or something like that.
Yeah.
So you're really giving them a lot of grace and a lot of just peace with that too, I'm sure, with just be having such an open approach to a question that can be hard and awkward.
I mean, I think people in general aren't coming from a place of, you know, mean spiritedness.
Right.
Even the parents who might not react a way that I would hope that they would, it's probably just because they don't know. They're not familiar with amputees or people who look different, whatever that is, and they haven't had those conversations. And as someone who grew up with a physical disability, those are conversations that I've had to have my whole life. I understand that people aren't coming from a place of trying to be mean, or it's usually just not understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and actually, I think that that is a great segue into your. When I first wrote my notes, I said book, and then I was like, oh no, books. Your
Yeah.
multiple books that, and tell me if I'm right here. You published 2 books in a span of 3 months.
It was pretty close to that. Yeah.
That's that's nuts. Like, how do you even do that? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that, because I know that because these are children's books, and I read somewhere that you did it as a to help conversations between parents and children. So let's talk a little bit about that. Tell me about the first one and the second one. What was the impetus of it? What's really your heart and your message behind them?
So the first book is The Girl with the Robot Leg, Being Brave.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd love if Brene Brown would read it and like it. That'd be like a dream come true.
Yeah. What does it say?
But
Awkward, brave, and kind.
yeah, exactly. Well, and I was going to name my second book Being Vulnerable, but my mom and I talked and decided bold was probably a better word for a children's book.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. So Being Brave, I I don't, one day I was homesick from work and I just had this idea and I wrote the story and then I sat on it for about a year. I was hoping to get published by a traditional publicist. I actually had an artist, a professional artist who wanted to work on the story with me. And then, through research and reaching out to different companies, I realized that if I really wanted to get the story out there, self publishing was probably going to be the best option. And
It's a complicated world in publishing. Hmm.
yeah, especially for children's books. I mean,
Yeah.
publishers don't generally take unsolicited manuscripts for children's books. So any of the companies I heard back from were offering a hybrid model where I had to pay a lot of money up front. And it just didn't feel right because my goal has never been to make money with this book. It's just been to have this book existing in the world for people who might benefit from it.
Yeah.
So through that, I decided I probably shouldn't spend money on a professional artist either, and thought back to my high school days when I used to like to draw and got some cartooning books and practiced and taught myself how to use Adobe Illustrator by watching YouTube
Oh
videos.
my gosh, you're like the
And
biggest publishing success story ever.
and I taught myself how to use the Amazon self-publishing tools and went for it and just did all the illustrations myself and for both books. So for Being Brave, I tell the story of a little boy seeing the main character. Her name is Poppy. Hopefully, I'll eventually have a book called Hoppy Poppy because
Oh, I love that.
I've got all sorts of ideas for that.
Yeah.
But it's about a little boy seeing her at the pool with her leg off,
Mhm.
her robot leg off, and getting scared because it's something he hasn't seen before. And it upsets Poppy, but she goes and talks to her mom, much like I would have done as a child. And she explains that to her, that it's probably just because he's never seen anything like that before. And so they go over and talk to him, and Poppy offers to, let him ask questions or touch the robot leg, and he does, and then they become friends, and it ends with Poppy expressing that she was happy that she was brave in that
Yeah.
situation, and that it's hard to be brave sometimes, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what's the premise of Being Bold?
So being bold is about Poppy starting class in a new, or starting school in a new class,
Okay.
and knowing that she's going to have classmates who don't know her story and that they're going to wonder why she has a robot leg. And she takes the opportunity for her show and tell on the first day of school to share a little bit about her story. And her classmates, after hearing that, they have a instance on the playground where another child is staring at Poppy, and her new friends go over and tell him that he should come over and ask questions instead of staring at her. And so he comes over and asks her if it hurts to jump rope, and she says no, and then they all jump rope together, end up all being friends. So happy endings on both books. I did also just want a note. In my books, I included characters who are not main characters that have other disabilities, such as being in a wheelchair
Oh, okay.
or they're blind. And I did that very purposely because I think that in our society, media doesn't do a good job of portraying people with disabilities other than in stories that focus on the disability. And I really wanted to tie that in to my books.
Mhm.
And I actually had some feedback that one little girl was reading my book, and in one of the scenes, I have them playing soccer, and a girl in a wheelchair is playing the goalie. And she said, Mommy, how can she play soccer in a wheelchair? And it sparked a really good conversation. And it wasn't even part of the plot, it was just an illustration. And that made me just ecstatic that
Yeah.
the book had that impact.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Well, I was thinking about this. One thing, we all grow, right? And we're all trying to figure things out. And one of my big regrets when my kids were younger is I feel like I didn't do enough of just demonstrating experiences that were not the same as theirs. And, just buying books with black children rather than just white children, or and demonstrate, and having books with kids with disabilities in them or something like that, just like you said, to normalize it and to just have that showing of like, oh, we're all in this together, and there's um we all make up the community, we all make up this world, and we're all uniquely made and beautiful. So I was just thinking, gosh, I wish I would have had this. I wish I would have had this as a resource with my kids when they were a little bit younger. And, as I'm going through, I'm like, this would be so good. And I know I've got some teachers who listen to this, like first, second grade teachers, like just throwing that in the library and, having it as something for people to do, or, even like birthday gifts. I mean, it's such a great way of having those conversations without like sitting down and having the conversation, right? Like, and I've got two teen boys, and if you want to have a real
Yeah.
conversation with them, you don't sit them down, look them in the eye and say, okay, we're going to talk about this today, right? Like it's just so I love that you've done that, and I love that you've done that in such an organic way through this book.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And, my mom is a early Head Start center manager. So she specializes in early childhood and helped me in, developing the plot and just all along the way because she had that expertise. One of the most surprising things for me, I wrote the book for kids like me. I wrote the book for kids who grew up different. What I didn't expect was the feedback from my friends who have kids that aren't exposed to people with disabilities and how much they love the book. I gave it to my neighbor, and his mom came over, and we were outside painting our house, and his mom came over and she said, "We have read the book 20 times in a row." And you gave it to him an hour ago. So that was just
Oh.
incredible to get that feedback on
Oh,
the
I
first
love
book.
that for you. And I love that for that family too, right? Like these are now experiences, these are now conversations. It's in their vocabulary. So when they see someone who might have a disability at Target, they're not going to, they're like, oh, okay, well, they just have a sparkly leg or something like that. Oh, I love that. So I'm sure that this is definitely in your mom's rotation at Head Start, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah, I've also been putting them in our little free
Oh, that's a
libraries around
great
town.
idea. I love that. I might have to we've got a few little free libraries in our neighborhood. I might have to get those in the hands of some of the owners. That's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, so I want to go back a little bit to your racing and athleticism. I'm wondering what are your thoughts about just people offering encouragement during a race? You mentioned you're not very fast, so typically in any race, people are always leapfrogging, right? Like back and forth and back and forth. Is that so? Now I'm kind of getting into, like, I know you don't speak for all people with disabilities, but like, do you like the hey, great job, or do you just treat me like someone else, leave me alone, let me stay in my zone? What are your thoughts on that?
So for me personally, I'm fine with the like, hey, great job, or, you know, the one I get a lot is you're an inspiration, which when I was on the Ironman bike ride with my bike, my DI2 shifters broke, so I couldn't
Oh
shift
my
gears
god.
for 88 miles. Um, I was basically like, yeah, you don't know why I'm an inspiration though. It's not because of my leg. It's because my bike is broken.
And you're in Boulder. You're not in Houston,
But
which is like, which is
yeah, we were in Boulder.
sea level.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm fine with all of those, like there's a whole inspiration is a very
Yeah.
loaded term, particularly in the disability community, but they're coming from a good place. I'm not going to get upset about that. I do end up saying you too a lot because I want to reciprocate. And so I think the band you two should probably give me some sort of deal for promoting them for saying you two all the time. But, I'm fine with that. Like, if it motivates you to see me out there and you want to say something
Awesome.
about it, cool. What I have the problem with is when someone wants to have a full on conversation for 8 miles of a half marathon. And I can't talk when I'm doing a half marathon. Some people can. I'm not one of those people. And so that's where it can get frustrating with people wanting to have a more in-depth conversation during a race.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So that's my take.
That makes a lot of sense. I did a half one time and ended up talking with someone, and I think it lasted like 2 miles, and then there was a water station. I was like, and I'm gonna just stop by at this water station. Like, I mean, she was lovely. It was it was great, but I was like, I can't keep talking. Yeah, and complete this.
Yeah. That's funny though. My husband and I, he also did an Ironman, and so we used to train together. He's faster than me, but we would still train together sometimes. And he got so used to people saying something that he just assumes people aren't talking to him anymore when we go out together. He's like, you get all the attention.
Oh, that's funny. I'm impressed that you guys train together. That's awesome. I think that's hard to do sometimes. So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Tell me what I would love to hear a favorite memory of any kind of athletic event you've had, which I know you've done a lot. I mean, going way back to when you were young. But and this is just in general, this has nothing to do with being an amputee or not, or, but just, I think we all have some really great memories.
So I guess the natural one that I'm going to go to is the Ironman, because it's an Ironman.
Yeah.
And for your listeners, I did actually do a TEDx talk a couple years ago about the whole experience, but I had a lot of things thrown at me that day that I didn't plan for. Some things I did, some things I didn't, but the big one was the Di2 shifters breaking on my bike at mile 24 and having to bike in one gear for 88 miles. The other one was that it was almost 100 degrees that day. So it was a pretty hot day. And then, another big one was, and these are all like, it was terrible when they happened, but looking back on it, like that Ironman experience could not be duplicated. So the other one was, I came off the bike, my legs were shot. I decided I was going to walk for a little while before I picked up running, but I don't wear a left shoe on my running leg because the tread is actually on the bottom of the running leg. And I had worn sandals to go to the race in the morning, so I didn't have a left tennis shoe.
Okay.
So for my walking leg. So Sasha, my handler, who had been taking pictures with my leg all day because she was carrying it around, was like, we have the same size shoes. Here's my shoes. So she gave me the shoes off her feet and walked in her water shoes alongside me to carry my legs for me. And, I got through it, and I was almost to the end, and my watch had died, so I had no idea what my time was. It was dark. That's all I knew. And my coach came running around the corner. He had flown in from Idaho to be there, and he was like, Emily, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make the cutoff. And I was like, what? He's like, you have to sprint. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? You realize how long I've been out here? And somehow I did, and I finished with only 48 seconds before the 17-hour cutoff. So crossing that finish line, my husband was there. He had a little snafu and went off course on the bike, so he didn't finish that year, but he did finish the same Ironman the next year. But he was there, Sasha was there, my coach was there, and that was it's definitely my biggest athletic accomplishment and one of my favorite memories.
For sure. Yeah, I think there's something really empowering about getting through those hard moments and pushing through, and then being able to look at them on the other side and go, oh my gosh, that sucked while I was going through it. But man, I'm so glad
Yeah.
I did. And I feel so good about myself. So I'm really excited about your books, and I definitely want to get them in the hands of my listeners. Can you tell people how to get a hold of you, where to find you on the socials, where your books are, and all of that kind of stuff? And I'll just say ahead of time, we'll make sure that we put those in the show notes.
Yeah. So I have a website. It's Emily-Harvey.com. And I have Being Brave on the homepage right now, so you can easily find that. And I will be sure to get Being Bold up as well. And on Instagram, I'm mharvadaptive. And the books are on Amazon. If you search for The Girl with the Robot Leg, Being Brave will come up because it has enough reviews now. And then you can click my author page and it'll take you to Being Bold. But like I said, you can also find those on my website.
Yeah, we will do that. And I did see on your website that you are reading for the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation, that you're kind of doing a YouTube video with that.
So I did, yeah. I read Being Brave for the Barbara Bush Literacy Foundation. So there's a video of me reading the book on my website as well. And I have a contact page on my website.
Okay.
So if you want to contact me directly, you can contact me through my website.
Okay, so I have one more question that has nothing to do. This is something I've been starting to ask all of my guests. I have this fascination with tattoos. I don't have any, but I love them. I love them on other people because I think that they so often have a really fantastic story to go along with it. So I was wondering, do you have any tattoos? And if so, would you be willing to share the meaning or a story, if there is one behind it? And if not, if you had to get one, what would it be and where would you put it?
I don't have any tattoos, although I've always used my leg as a billboard, sort of. So I've always been able to either draw on it or
How does that work? You
make fake
just
tattoos.
seriously, do you just use like a Sharpie or something and it comes off?
So it doesn't come off. So I now have, bright colored legs with sparkles. But when I was growing up, I just had a flesh colored leg that had kind of a foam around the ankle
Okay.
part so my socks wouldn't fall down, because the leg is slippery. So if you don't have the foam around the ankle, your socks will just fall down. So I used to draw on the foam part just with like gel pens. I would draw an
Yeah.
anklet because I was in middle school and that was really cool.
Oh, how funny.
And after the Ironman, I thought I wanted to get an Ironman tattoo, but I don't. I think I'm glad I didn't do that. And I think that if I had to get a tattoo, I would get one that said resilience. And that word, it's been
Yeah.
part of my life. It's part of everyone's life. Like everyone has challenges they have to get through. But I think this year in particular, it's really tested our resilience. And I think that would be a good reminder to myself that I am resilient and can get through all of the things that, races or life throws our way that we can't control. And, I think that racing and going to law school, which we didn't really talk about, but I think that those things, have made me a resilient person. And I think that they have helped me cope with what's happened this year in our world. And I think, other people who haven't had those same experiences are maybe having to figure it out for the first time this year, or at least in a different way. And yeah, so I think a tattoo on my wrist that said resilience would probably be what I would get.
I love that. That's great. And you're so right. I mean, boy, it's been a tough year. It's been a really hard year. And I know some people have had it harder than others. And, if you've never dealt with some of the challenges, even just one of them, right? Like how many have we faced as a nation? That's kind of hard to deal with. And you obviously have that foundation of resilience. Uh, and so, yeah, that's a perfect one for you. I love it. If you ever happen to get one, let me know.
Okay.
I love it. Hey, Emily, I thank you so much for coming on. I know you've worked a long day in your day job, which is, not an easy job to have, I know. And I just really want to thank you for your leadership in this space. A lot of us are learning and we have a lot to learn about experiences other than our own. I'm really excited about your books. Just really proud of you. I'm in the process of writing my own and it is a booger. It's tough. So I'm excited for you. I'm excited to see the ripples that come from this with conversations with kids and where that can do. And I just really appreciate your mentorship and your willingness to answer questions not only today, but I know that I have kind of pinged you in the past on our Skirt Sports page and stuff like that, saying, "Well, I don't understand about this." So thank you for that. Thank you for that. And we will put all of your contact information, all of that below.
Well, thank you so much for having me on today and, having this conversation and being open to learning. I just think we all continue to learn no matter what, no matter how much we know, there's always something more to learn. And I just really, really appreciate, having the opportunity to share today. And thank you for the opportunity.
I still can't believe Emily published 2 books in about 3 months. What an accomplishment. I'm so in awe. But I think it's also a great example of her resilience and that resilience that she discusses. Be sure to check out her books. The links are in the show notes, and I will also put the links to her site and the TEDx talk she gave. Don't forget to get your download, How to Enjoy Shame-Free Health by Breaking 8 Rules at gracedhealth.com/bad rules. Also, is there someone you know whom today's conversation would serve? Maybe it's a teacher, maybe it is a parent with a, special needs child on one level or another. I would love it if you would share this with them and or on social media. That really helps the show. If you haven't subscribed to the show, I invite you to just click that little subscribe button so you can find your own graced health every week. Yes, I know that's corny. What's the one simple thing I want you to remember? This is something I try and do with all of my shows or my episodes. Let's do what we can to normalize the conversation surrounding those whose experiences are different than our own. I know I'll be purchasing these books for my nephew and maybe for a few of those special teacher friends of mine. And then also the other simple thing, don't make a full-on conversation with someone who has a prosthesis during a race. Little tip from Emily to you. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.